After last weekend's victory by Mr. Smooth Operator himself, Carlos Sainz in Melbourne, Ferrari are riding the wave of optimism, having delivered on their winter targets of starting the 2024 F1 season with a much more consistent car in both qualifying and, more importantly, the race. With Fred Vasseur declaring that the drivers are no longer in survival mode, thanks to the remarkable advancements made with the SF-24, which is in stark contrast to that of last year's challenger, the SF-23. This year's SF-24 is proving to be a much more benign and predictable car on long runs, and that was key to the spectacular 1-2 finish for Sainz and Leclerc in Australia last weekend. But, as we all know in F1, you can't celebrate a singular victory for too long, as the other teams will be hard at work in their respective factories, working on preparations for the upcoming Japanese Grand Prix, aiming to come out of that the eventual winners. The sport is ever moving at a fast pace, and Ferrari knows this better than anyone. And with that in mind, the team are moving forwards with the first phase of the SF-24's in-season updates. And we have long known, even before the start of the season, that an even more extreme version of the car was in the wind tunnel compared to the launch spec seen in the opening 3 rounds of this year's championship, with Vasseur stating the SF-24 to be much more drivable than last year. It's easier for the drivers, but also for us as a team to develop. And I want to come with a quick update on these extreme updates, as since the last video I made on the subject, fresh info has come to light. This now extreme update will no longer be arriving for Japan, as it's now instead going to be arriving at Imola as originally intended. The team want to spend as much time with it in the wind tunnel as possible, eking out as much performance that they possibly can. However, outside from the confirmed update, the team have also been rumoured to be running other models of the SF-24 in CFD and the wind tunnel. And interestingly enough, there was a model of the SF-24 which included the overbite air intakes seen on the RB20, the complete inverse of this year as well as last year's Red Bull car. Now, unfortunately for the team, the results gathered from the first test carried out with this style of sidepod solution did not lead to any positive results, essentially meaning there was no gains found. But this doesn't mean that in the future, these results can't be positive. What's the saying? If at first you don't succeed, try and try again. One further thing to note on this test, which was carried out, was that the overbite which Ferrari used in the CFD and wind tunnel was more akin to that of the one found on the McLaren MCL38. Part of the reason for this is because without making major changes to the internal layout of the sidepods, it's near impossible for any team to simply copy and paste such a complicated design that the Red Bull team have created for this year. And even with the extensive amount of work that Ferrari have undertaken over the winter period to arrive in 2024 with a much more streamlined internal sidepod layout, when you compare it to the sidepod internals of the Red Bull RB20, you can quite clearly see there is still a significant difference between the packaging of the two teams. So this unfortunately might be a slight bit of a dead end for the team this year, but perhaps for 2025, in the final year of this set of regulations, we may see this design incorporated into the probable SF-25. But away from the wind tunnel test, they are, however, very confident about the potential shown by the new aerodynamic package that will be introduced at Imola. And for a little more background information on what will be changing on the SF-24 at that race, I will now go over those very briefly in this video. But before we go any further, if you've enjoyed the content within this video, please consider subscribing, as I would greatly appreciate it, as I'm looking to grow this channel and I have a lot more content that I want to produce. And I may even be going to the Japanese Grand Prix later on in April, so I could have some really interesting content to bring you all. Right, back to the video. The new look SF-24 to debut in Imola in May will feature revised sidepods and floor. with these evolutionary steps aimed at building upon the solid vanilla base created over the winter period, an intentional decision made by the team many months ago. Ferrari will be following an upgrade path not too dissimilar to that of which the RB19 undertook last season with regards to its cooling of their car. So, one area to be revised alongside the sidepod will be that of the inlets. So expect to see an extreme iteration of the air inlets make their debut, much in the same fashion seen on the RB19 from Hungary onwards last year, with it being known as the letterbox openers. A feature, ironically, which has already been utilised on the Aston Martin AMR24 this season. This is possible for Ferrari thanks to there being no major cooling issues experienced across all the Ferrari powertrains in the opening 2 rounds of the season. Now, Ferrari also had to pay attention to their own airbox design, as it's a lot more aggressive than those of their Ferrari-powered customer cars, such as the Sauber and Haas. And thankfully for the team, there are no issues found whatsoever in this area as well. Therefore, all the time spent in the wind tunnel can be focused purely on trying to find the most performance for the car, as they aren't facing last year's cooling issues. And speaking of performance gains, as has been well documented over the last 3 years, the flaw in this current generation of F1 cars is the most vital area for generating downforce and lap time. So the team have, in conjunction with the sidepod and inlets upgrade, designed a brand new floor for Imola. And as we saw with all the pictures of the Red Bull floor in Monaco when Sergio Perez had his crash, and with the subsequent crashes of other teams, the difference between the Red Bull floor and that of all the other teams last season was massive. The level of detail which was found on the RB19's floor made every other floor last season look so basic, and I think this is an area Ferrari, like all the other teams, have a lot of catching up to do, but also on the other side of things, that of course means there's a lot of performance left in all of their floors to be extracted with updates. And that's why Ferrari will be bringing a brand new version of their floor in conjunction with the sidepod updates